Florida leads the country in having some of the highest rates of credit card debt.
So many folks are drowning under the weight of credit card debt.
More than $1 trillion of it.
The average interest rate almost 22%, or $1.17 trillion.
She relied on credit cards, but the bills kept growing.
I was like, holy, like it was hundreds of dollars per month.
Credit cards are so easy to use. It's a tiny piece of plastic that you keep in your wallet to pay for things, and it's almost like a badge of honor in society to get a credit card because it gets your name is printed on it, you can use it to pay for things, and you see everyone else using it too, so by extension you want one. But the problem is credit cards are so easy to use on one hand, but they're so easy to misuse on the other hand. And you can see that ever more present in society because people are drowning in credit card debt, credit card usage is at an all-time high, and we're becoming more of a cashless society. So in this video, I wanted to unpack the behaviors of why credit cards are so easy to use and misuse on the other hand, and a strategy that you can implement today to take control of your spending and to be more conscious of how much money is leaving your bank account every single day. The first reason I can think of is friction. And friction and convenience basically go hand in hand. Friction is essentially how easy or hard it is to use the product. So for example, a product with more friction is basically going to be harder to use and pretty much more annoying to use. And a product with less friction, on the other hand, is easier to use and just more satisfying in a way. Companies are trying to decrease the amount of friction that it takes to use their product, and credit cards are no different. For example, back in the old days, credit cards used to have to be swiped and then you would sign for something to actually pay for something. The problem is, eventually credit cards got chips, which made it even easier to use as you would just put your credit card into the terminal, no signature required, reducing the amount of friction that you actually needed to spend money. It got even faster because now instead of inserting your card, you just tap it and it's that much faster. And mobile payments are taking advantage of this because you could just double tap your iPhone, use Apple Pay, and just tap your phone and you're on your way without even wasting time taking a credit card out of your wallet to actually use. And your phone is either in your hand or in your pocket where it's easily accessible. It just makes so much sense that people would use this to pay for things. The problem is that it becomes such an unconscious habit of spending because instead of thinking like with cash, you would have to physically count out the cash and give it to the cashier to pay for something. With a credit card that's being tapped, you don't even have to think about it. You see the number up top of how much you owe, you tap your card, you're on your way. If you do this multiple times in a day, it becomes so easy to overspend because you're not consciously thinking of how much you're spending because you're just tapping and going. So the second reason I could think of is credit limits. And I was pretty shocked to see how many people didn't understand credit limits when I was doing my research for this, but credit limits are basically the maximum amount that you can spend on your card. And for so many people, because they're unconsciously spending, it's so easy to hit the top end of your credit limit. And credit limits are basically assessed by how much income you're making, your employment status, and a whole host of other factors that contribute to how much of a limit you would get. The problem is that so many people are not thinking of credit limits as the maximum amount I could spend, but more so how much money I could spend and basically have free money. Once you get to the top end of your credit card and you've maxed it out, you are now on the hook for not only paying all that money back, but you also have interest assessed as well, which can usually be north of 20%. You can imagine how hard it is to pay back those cards, and for a lot of people, because of how easy it is to spend, they just open up a new credit card and then they start spending again, increasing that debt snowball, and it becomes so much harder to get out of that. So because of those two factors of reducing how much friction credit cards have, and on top of that credit limits, which are now so much higher than what could be in your bank account, you can see that credit card debt has reached $1.166 trillion. That is such an astronomically large number that you have to put the zeros in order to make sense of how big of a number that truly is. Not only is it bad enough that people are spending such a high number on their credit cards, but 59% of Americans can't even afford a $1,000 emergency expense. And that really shows you how much there is against spending versus saving within American society, and the scale of this number is so absolutely insane on both ends. Theoretically, most Americans have a negative net worth because if you're in a huge debt spiral and you have more debt than assets, you have a negative net worth, and that is as bad as it can get. What's the antidote to using a credit card then? I know I've said a lot of negative things about credit cards, but it's not all doom and gloom. There is a method that you can use to take control of your spending today, and it really doesn't take a ton of effort as so long as you build it into a habit. I've been an investor for over 10 years, and I've worked for investment companies, I've created my own fund, but way before that, 10 years ago, when I was fresh out of college, I worked at a bank. I'll never forget this story because of how impactful it was for my life, and it's the reason why I'm making this video today. One day, a woman walks into the branch with her kid, and I'm just typing along, and she comes up to me, and she's like, I want to pay off my credit card. So I'm thinking, okay, just pull up her information on the computer. I'm thinking, oh, she must have like thousands of dollars that she has to pay back. But no, the number that she had to pay back was $36. And I was so shocked that why would someone come to pay off $36? So in my ignorance, I said to her, oh, you don't have to pay off $36. You actually don't owe that much on your card. You could do this later. And she decisively told me, no, I have to pay this off. I need to do this right now. And she takes cash out of her wallet and pays off the $36. I asked her, why are you paying off $36? And she said that her family was so in debt for the majority of her life that it impacted the way that she actually thought of finances and how she spent money. Because she has her young son with her, when she goes to places, she can't just bust out her wallet and count out all the cash and do it. Most of the time she just has her credit card on her and uses it, and then she's able to go, so that way she's not wasting so much time. But before the credit card spending gets out of control, she'll go to the bank branch and pay off the credit card, so she's consciously aware of how much money she's spending. So the problem with this method is that I don't expect people to go into a branch and pay off their credit card, especially when you can just do it on your computer or your phone. So what is the remedy to this? The one solution that I could think of is debit cards. Debit cards are something that pretty much every kid who opens up a bank account gets, and they feel really cool because it's that same feeling of a plastic card with your name on it. But debit cards and credit cards function completely differently. Debit cards work by taking the money that's already in your account, and you don't owe interest or anything along with it because you can't spend more than what's in your bank account, so by extension you don't owe anybody money. And on the flip side, you don't get any cool perks because it's just your own money that you're spending. If we were to think of credit cards like debit cards, it would change the game fundamentally. If you have a credit card and you, for example, have a $20,000 limit, but in your bank account you only have $5,000. So the max you can spend is $5,000 because that's how a debit card would function. And the best part about it is that you get all the perks that credit card users get when you spend that $5,000. And hopefully you're not dropping your bank account to zero, but you get what I mean. So for example, if you have $5,000 to spend, you, for example, could have a 3% cashback reward on your card, and you can get all of that money back to you in the form of a reward for spending. Whereas with a debit card, you would get nothing. So every single time you're using your credit card, you should be thinking, how much is in my bank account first before I start blowing all this money on my card, and now I owe interest and I can't really pay that back. The easiest way that I could think of to do this is by paying your credit card off as often as possible. You don't have to pay off your credit card every day. Most of the time, some of the charges don't even accrue on your credit card and they're still pending. So I'm not saying you have to do that. But what if you were to pay off your credit card weekly? You would not only get a greater sense of control knowing how much is on your credit card and how much you have to pay off, you also would see what's in your bank account and how much is leaving. But the best part about it is you don't owe interest because you're paying off your card well before you've reached the point where the credit card payment is due, and you get the rewards from the actual spending. So it's kind of a win-win. Just by doing that simple behavior of treating credit cards like debit cards, you can change your financial spending and conscious habits completely. It is that powerful of a trick, and this is how I've used credit cards ever since that day that woman walked into the bank. She changed the way that I thought about credit cards and being in this debt spiral, and because of her, I've never ever had credit card debt that I couldn't pay off myself, And I've never owed interest on a card because I knew consciously how much money was in my bank account, how much I owe on my credit card, and controlling my spending so that I'm never crossing that threshold and getting into a point of no return. It's that simple of a method, but it's so powerful if you use it over a long duration of time. Another thing you can do to kind of foster this habit is you could take a pen and a notepad and every single day just write what your bank balance is and what your credit card balance is. It takes no less than, I would say, like 3 minutes to do this, where you're just logging into your credit card and your bank account, writing this down and keeping track of it. And what it will do is it will consciously make you think of how much money is both on your card and in your bank account. And by default, it's slowing down the process of spending money because now you have to have more thinking that goes into it. And all these things, even though when you first start, it's going to seem stupid. You do it for a week, it seems better. You do it for a month, it's even better. But once you hit that year mark of doing this, you will be surprised at how much control you have over your finances because you know every single number when it comes to your bank account and credit card, and you are the master of your own fate. And it's so important to remember this because without this, this is why people get into credit card debt. They overspend, then it's so much harder to pay back, they owe interest, and then it just starts this nasty snowball that you don't want to be a part of ever. Rather than, trying to do what this lady does of going into the branch and paying off her card, I'm thinking of more of a modern way that you could apply this in today's society and get the same effect that she did by taking control and being more conscious of how much money is leaving out of your bank account. So that's pretty much it. That was the whole point of why I wanted to make this video, is to give people a strategy of how they can slow down their spending, because credit cards are not going to change. It's going to become even faster to use them. So we can slow down our thinking, and instead of misusing a credit card because it's so easy to do, we're taking control and being conscious of how much money is in our bank account and in our credit card.